proposing intervention strategies to the CDC and the CBO, and bitch, they got me gagging in the worst way talking about National Health Insurance. Queen, when was the last time you heard AIDS, black, queer, HIV positive, butch, sissy, or faggot out of any of these bitches in the community's mouths? I'll wait. Matter of fact, let me beat my face because we done beat you to your own house. Welcome, hunty. Let me grab your coat because bitch, y'all have been busted while we're out here looking dusted, serving faith. So learn to speak up now. Remember, silence equals death, boo. But this bitch just wants to feel free on the beach. Alien 12. We show some impact of HIV/AIDS on black communities. Been a failure HIV research not about violence that on social science. The topic of HIV/AIDS among black communities falls through the cracks of the multiple causes with black hair. People live African American studies filter death social messages AIDS among black communities and health translates between practices where the AIDS crisis on the ground and HIV prevention within public health intervention models is not a facility to be able to change among communities that never has high risk group search to isolate abnormal characteristics among communities containing friends. The aim is to contain infections as the general population remains safe. Public discourse to shut the risk and test disease to body communities based on substance category for communities business YouTube. Sometimes people outside the general population rely on assumptions about the population and racial assumptions about the population of the female only in order to reduce HIV prevalence and members of the risk groups do not possess knowledge about prevention risk factors that pose that are inappropriate and performance that be serious among studies HIV prevention oversize sexual behaviors and do not investigate the interplay between those groups the AIDS and social communities that about that epidemic. There's a gap in research and an impact on high-risk communities. This prosecution is attempting to the consequences of such behavior occur.
I just want to inform anybody who's listening to this track at this very moment at the same time. This track is going to be turned, and I need really cut. And I need my really cut.
Now, honey, they've tried everything from CBOs to prevention workers to funding, and none of it has helped. We call this an intervention with no results because fundamentally, you can't trust these bitches. They always say something is wrong with us, like we killing regular people, but what's not regular about us? They even tried coming to the bar. I remember that their pretty little prevention table, but nobody wanted their business out there like that. That stigma gives me crow's feet just thinking about it because at the end of the day, all they care about is the shmoney anyways. I guess silence ain't the only thing killing. Alien 13. Stigmatization of HIV/AIDS primary obstacle prevention, CBO's pressure for those who are HIV vendor concerned as being after stigmatization allows an organization to undermine every person. Stigma determines whose lives are worth saving. Stigma impacts women that remember the wrong to for access prevention activities such as supportive advice, risk homophobia, transphobia, God engagement. Organizations need to get their numbers all up enough. Red tables go to the walls, we're not talking to them. Community members are working to refuse these organizations because they're only meaningful. The CBO's efforts are viewed as a center of society needs of black people. CBO's target population are not interested in the views of those populations. CBO's are talking about members of our community are really talking to or working with them. Prevention workers are not being effective because prevention workers are asking because they go to members of our community, not trust CBOs and training. HIV/AIDS prevention where TB workers are to use devices, discrimination, and prevention are based on how that black homes and these subjects who must separate the people population based, especially on efforts of discrimination of our community support to identify our community particularly to let the rest of the public we stay. The city members of our community is a little concerned with taking of poverty that is the need to continue to discipline their behaviors that the more members of prevention efforts to facilities services to stigmatize them even more when the universe shows the scope of people won't be willing to go to people think something's wrong with it, so they don't want to use it that way. Now this right here ain't gonna be no intervention. This is an intervention where the only thing we want to hear is what you're doing where you are right now. We call this a prevention ball, and when I walk face, I ain't here to just look pretty, even though I do it oh so well. I'm showing y'all how to make sure not to get caught slipping, because that girl named AIDS plays for Jeeps. But don't get it confused. This ain't no house. We don't need more of those. We've been kicked out of way too many. This is a home, and in this home, we do all from HIV pills to hormone therapy to jobs. You name it, we got it. Because we ain't got nothing else. Welcome to my ball. Alien 12. All members can touch social business model. You can all return to social media this year. This is social value for all members of all practice. This is the prevention approach to practice intervention. Social knowledge in this community lost member comment the conditions work about. Strategy to ultimate social knowledge all around the cost of substance misuse, HIV, crisis responsibility itself. Renewal of constant treating stuff with the moral negative pregnancy, outside war of your family. Don't care about you because you are getting more to help you start a new social, not the part of the other to consistent affiliation, education like that. Aside members as well as those moving outside within house members who sold their house issues that they're not discussing about dollars, green apples, the polish, right after broken, so I hope we're there, being body gas station cylinders, and I'm proud of HIV prevention, but also supporting those already affected with HIV, they clear high, treat for to the disease and to do that, trying to come along with HIV, AIDS, to the end, and like, I to the last time, provide love, care, and service. These guys have to live every day in the community, guys to deal with HIV, AIDS, but also they put in bar houses, but they never do public environment to provide the state of HIV, AIDS, prevention, which I do bar houses, great red house, friends, balls, boards, good work, red balls, do that, house, prevention, friends, balls, competitive performance, images, status, or use, to give them up a message about HIV, restoration, bar, communities, the captive, at-risk population, modern labor is built in the communities, necessary, try to use competition within the bar, cost-setting information, reduce competition, abuse, with images, status, for it, competition, then to grasp the bar, now, possibility, HIV, is versus modern theory, and we must speak to the trial of their agreement, as well as our book representation of writing information that are usually otherwise not outside world. Now, welcome to the House of the Hidden Leaf. As some of you already know, we do here. We always provide it all. So we have risk reduction materials for everyone. I'll try to make sure I get to the back if I have time.
Man, I know you folks are moving there.
You say? I said you know.
Hey, it's quarter base. I'm not.
By the way, good morning, y'all. I know it's like early as fuck, so sorry for that.
Yes.
How's everybody doing today? Good morning.
Oh man, I did not get weird.
Yeah.
That might be true.
Talked about. I accelerate you what's going to happen. I can't wait to see South America. I'm listening to I'm saying
Oh, we also got like oranges. We got the bananas over there because people are hungry. Want some of the morning. I think we have a couple Red Bulls left. If anyone wants some of that, so just let me know. Hey, what you need?
I got you.
Red Bull.
Okay. Rob, can I have a banana? Yes, you can have a banana. You're cool with sugar-free Red Bull?
Everybody else cool? Anybody need anything else? Yeah. Okay. Let me get her this banana.
Why you keep getting bananas out of the bag? Can you get a banana on the table?
I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't see it. I mean,
I know the small stuff like that.
I'm so dead. Ben done flowed the bananas. Alright, I'm done.
Alright, so I guess what is the role that the affirmative is promoting in regards to how the judges should evaluate the donation?
We think if the judges think that the House of the Hidden Leaf is good for being able to resolve the ways in which
How do they
stigmatization.
decide that?
So,
Based off of what the
right. So that would take the second part of the sentence. The second part of the sentence was that if we are able to prove that the House of the Hidden Leaf is a good strategy for reducing
So how do you
HIV/AIDS.
prove that?
Right. So we think that the Bailey evidence provides instances of how the performative strategies of risk reduction
Are
that
they
we have.
evaluating the value of the performance of the 1AC as something that, like, as a way to understand the efficacy of the ballroom?
Yeah.
Okay, so how do they do that?
So it's like if they think, for instance, the strategies that we have proposed in this debate and the performance of the 1AC in terms of walking face is a
What
form.
strategies?
So the ability for us to promote risk reduction in a way that is like we think is like more comfortable and the ability to counter for the stigmatization.
That's interesting. What is more comfortable?
So, for instance, we think that the ballroom changes, the forms of like competition that the Bailey card talks about is what promotes that comfortability. So the ability for us to compare strategies in ways that are like, for instance, not about, coming for each other, but rather being able to talk about strategies in productive ways that allow us to produce conversations that do something once we
I
leave.
guess in the world of producing strategies, where is the ballroom? Is it here? Do we produce
It's here.
it? It's here?
Yeah.
I guess in a world, how do you get into the ballroom and when do you leave the ballroom?
You're already in it.
I'm already in the ballroom?
Everybody's already in it.
Everybody's in the ballroom?
Everybody here.
Is Roberto in the ballroom?
Yeah.
Is Chris in the ballroom?
Sure.
What is Chris? Chris, what are you doing in the ballroom? Chris, are you going to compete against me?
Am I gonna what?
Are you going to compete against?
Not everybody in the ballroom has to compete.
Yeah, there's like.
Not everyone. So I guess
They're actually judges.
There are judges in ballrooms.
So I
Oh,
guess
so-
my next question then is if everyone is in the ballroom, if they consent to it, they're just from here. What then are the different roles in this debate? Not just like ballroom writ large, but what are the roles that the 1AC has occupied?
100%.
And where have you isolated us?
So the affirmative and negative are in competition with each other about risk reduction strategies. The judges are judges. The audience is the audience. Nothing changes. That is literally what happens in the ballroom. Like that's.
Right, but if we're not, I'm wondering at the level of spectatorship, right? What is the role of it? Like, where are
The
you?
judge.
What do we see?
What do you mean? What are we saying? You saw the 1AC.
I guess what my better question is what is Leonardi, what is Roberto, what is every white
Okay.
person in this room seeing, and why is that good for us to
Okay,
show them?
so I guess if it's like a spectacularship argument, I think A is just that like black queer folk are always already spectacularized. The way that I perform in these spaces, like I've already been coded as such. Why does every policy debater make it out of their way to come up to me and be like, oh my God, I love your
policy
stuff?
debate. I think it's some real shit that why should we,
For sure.
incentivize,
This is what I'm saying is
strategy building based off of
we
performance aspects.
we have not incentivized anything. We think that over focus on the spectatorship of white people misses the point and leaves black queer people open to violence because it never talks about what the 1AC was centralized on.
Okay, it was funny. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, I'm just getting my stuff.
It's okay. Yeah, I'll wait.
It sure did just click like
Why you say oh?
It's Vito over here.
Oh, I thought, because you were looking at me, I thought I knew.
No, I sure did. I don't ever leave it more.
Well, I would have told them to take your shoes off anyway. It seems like.
Normally I have socks on.
Yeah, that's the new part.
You said I got what?
Thank you for taking care of your feet.
I got a question, sorry.
Next to the F.
Mr. Aff, you said.
Next to the F, yeah.
I should have wrote this on a piece of paper. Well, I should have. I'm just saying. It's easier to see the whole thing. But it's fine. I do it like this too. I'm damn it.
You let me know when you're finished.
I'm ready.
You are? Okay, cool.
The black and tomorrow suture through the absent imago of black female body places those who occupy such a place of captivity are written out of and into existence or negation to our 2018 intramurally were fixated on the wounded flesh of black men can do it for morning we refuse who black women and cis and trans are effective relations and empathetic visual identifications are roasted when black men the absent imago of black female body aid in the construction of phantasmic and material violence when the pleasure director black weapons ejection travels to the space of once negated as a how do we elaborate more to bury the traveling of that impulse part of secretary revenge trauma and haunts interpretations of psyche itself if we read characters according to the pictorial value according to the instead of according to their symbolic relation we should clearly be led into error now black people flesh occupies the real is always exceeding and preceding signification the her maka with the reboost for psychic afterlife of slavery simultaneously serving as the artifice of domestication and rupturing or butt rupture structuring conceptions of gender, the oscillation of her in betweenness is the intramural question that should structure analytics of blackness all the way down to the psyche. Trophy 2018, what if we were to shift our orientation to black women, both reading reconstruction, a little bit of a heart below, but no responses to that, so purpose for the like the slavery, gender X, and the mode of violence, so in manner through which our understanding of black suffering religious affects the deepest levels of the psyche, our political, ethical, and political investments appear to focus on the primarily on black male objection. They're immediately incomprehensible as soon as we have linked them while reading the psychological slavery to both of the roots of both of the roots of black people flesh as a text for living and dying. We practice the mode of thinking with and through the untranslatable both of black life and deadly social life of white black women's suffering operates vividly as the black conscious word learned. A psyche which unleashes incalculable aggressivities towards the black woman and black women's flesh under prison direct psychoanalysis will become unconscious of self, the obliteration of our suffering and our collective imagining way of black violence and hermeneutic lens attend to the hieroglyphics of black female flesh translates the muteness and ideological versions of black female towards articulate distinct particularity and other grammars trauma and suffering operate outside the form of the black mother where her ability to grieve is undermined through fundamental tropes of her womanhood reversing it force iconographic relationship with the flesh. William 2016. The eligibility of grieving black mothers to different forms corresponding to historical shifts of political enfranchisement, sexual, legal disenfranchisements for black Americans, recognition of a hand and empathy for grieving black mothers went from eligibility being undermined within stereotypes of black womanhood. The mother-child bond sensitivity to the matriarch, however, the need for to react to her grievances is cast aside because of her omnipresent anger and emotionality back which meaning formations underlying many stereotypes of black womanhood or motherhood are foreclosures and perversions of the relationship between mother and child when the ability to grieve is unrecognized and this contribution of the relationship be broken or decimated by me. Till Mobley is an icon of black maternal mourning and considerations of black mothers who animate grievous grievance. Now the black maternal is constituted by an objective and absent image through which desire in relation are suited to black slavery's breach of the womb signified the modified forms of exchange that entrap her within the realm of femininity through violence that exceeds the category black woman exists as a rival within the inclusion of the antagonism producing the psychic breathing space and possibility of freedom foreclosed by her flesh. Thus black people flesh exists as he has since and facilitated the repression depicting its litigation within the black psyche. Trophy 2018 through historically specific relations of power undergirding black maternity has vanished. We must examine the process of identification and desire to black people here will begin the illumination of how the black mother and by extension all black women are always already a rival for more than just the black child regardless of gender. The object of desire is gratuitous freedom from everyone including one's black self solution intervention for to the parameters of psychoanalytic inquiry to account for the syntactic particularity of the social cultural impact of New World slavery on symbolic registers. Black female flesh establishes their state of breach and animating balance of pre-season sexual drive and that which was repressed. It is due to the black woman is bold, subject to repression and dark process of identification of black people's inseparable form and innocence. The black femininity, the black maternal is rival receives violence and directed against her for being the very negation of the palace black father's loss of amazing demonstrates how black mothers control black sons, daughters, and non-binary children can now place the flesh of the closures or constituted by native that has repressed the management of black female flesh of the black mother is neither for close to a way nor available in the symbolic registers of double body constitutes her objective body and amalgam affecting precipitate the objective medical by blackness for a large effect of the black intramural relations of the white gates of the performative intervention of white over determination marking black bodies as animalistic and erased from the human rhetoric of rights. Nancy 2008. Spectatorship transmogrified Bartman's body, the racist gaze and performance, having parted with her previous guardians, her new guardian, the showman of wild animals. Bartman was fed his small treats in order to entice her dancing. Venus became the other which gazers could measure their own humanity and superiority. The gazer has always found it empowered definition and eroticization is eroticizing, sexualizing. Now alternative forms of the family are searching for the best female imago. The white heteronormativity structure and unit of the family reveals that when he sees over investment in symbolic attachments that she provides. King 2018, the black matriarch has embedded itself in the U.S. imaginary and almost archetypal fashion. Primary discourse used to imagine and speak about the black family as a prominent object of this quiet black female-headed households are perverse and deviant. Black matriarch foreclosed upon the possibility of imagining a viable non-nuclear family formation followed by black single female sexual autonomy reinforces the ethos of personal responsibility and disavows the structural inequality of queer scholarship continues to propose black matriarchal, non-heteropatriarchal, and queer models of affirming black family life. The family as a social unit is something evident and natural form of human organization persistent modifications still retain attachments to humanistic concept of organizing for eligible black collective the family as a way of organizing black life still remains unexamined and perhaps even unthought of because of conversations about alternative modes of naming the black family has taken on almost a sacred significance. They do not critique the family and the violent ways that the family emerges as a category of all forms of humanism, crowds of the dynamic and emerges the ways that black people reimagine and invent new modes of relation. Only one sees obfuscation is structured towards an ethic of personal responsibility, creates an iconographic relationship that forecloses the articulation of a grievance to those who occupy the position of the black female. William 2016. If we read Caroline's resolution to die, I have this much. If we read Caroline's Caroline's resolution to deck the future was prefigure's president, we would perceive her as displacing her griefs towards an already filled mission. Her choice allowed her to circumvent the responsibility to lives that were made living alone within the deeper strength of group and mourning. Fundamental to the strong black mother in mourning. In her mourning is her ability to contain the inexpressible wellness of grief so that she can carry her family out in the pains of trauma sense of will. Figurations that are alive and present that being respectively tied to the grievance of family ensures positive change for others.
Yeah, I'll say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the ways in which you can kind of frame these onslaught of cards is that the one and sees a read. We think that the ways in which you understand competition at the threshold of performativity is one that necessitates, that performance being either good or bad. And we don't have an alternative because we're saying that we're impact turning the 1AC as necessitating the imago of the black woman to produce ideas of transcendental, gratuitous freedom that does not change the objective desire of absenting her. Jasmine, what does that mean? Great question. It says the ways in which you have an overinvestment in the kind of symbolic economy of black women does nothing for the outside of the ballroom. The negative asks the question, right, of what does it mean to be inside and outside the ballroom? Our answer is that black women occupy that space as a reference to produce kind of those monikers of what is accepted and what is outside, what is artifice and what is artifact. We think that performative components of the 1AC reside on those notions of the demonstrative nature of black female flesh to produce these moments of freedom and disparity, but that black women are always held down from that. We think that the way in which the Bailey evidence articulates HIV and AIDS as an overfocus of kind of like as a causal relationship to sex, as a causal relationship to sexual relations is one not true in the case that black women who are sex workers, right, and who will enter into ballroom communities does nothing to, change the criminalizing stigma, does not do anything to change the stigmas that are tied to their, relations to sexual preferences. I think it's indicative of how no black woman on the panel, in the room, myself, accepted the gesture of the condom because we think that it's indicative of the idea of choice, right? We'll do more of that work kind of in the debate because we're going to wait for the response, but I think it is necessarily important to kind of create a line or a moment where we make things clear, because what does it mean for the judge to override the non-consensual negation that a black woman has to the ways in which she is centered as the moment of both affirmation and negation herself. We think that if we win the impact turn, we have done a sufficient analysis of the negative, as the performance does one nothing for black women, for black people writ large, and also two, is part of the type of symbolic exchange through which we understand gratuitous violence on the intimate level, not the object level, which I think is going to be important for how the impact tackles happens. Yes, I think that's it.
Yeah. I have a couple of questions. First off, what does it mean for the black women to be both the imago and the real?
Right, so I can respond to that. I think Sharafa is talking about the ways in which Spiller is talking about syntactic particularity that black women both exceed and perceive value exchange. What this means then is that the ways in which things become signified and put into relation are through the negation of female flesh, because the way in which the gendering, I think I am, because the ways in which the gendering process takes place, right, is that throws black women into a space of captivity because of the position that they occupy. We think that the ways in which we...
Well, I guess then a clarification question would be in order. What do you mean by the real?
I mean, the real is that which is not interpreted. The real is that which is open to infinite moments of signification. We think that black women are that, infinite fodder through which, relation and signification take place, which is at what we're saying the forefront of
Okay,
the
so signification occurs through the real, not the symbolic. So
no, our argument is that which occupies the real is it has height, which is an impact on the way, which impacts the way that we, interact with each other, but it has no signifier.
I have a couple questions. What is the black maternal?
The black maternal, are you asking in the context of the Williams evidence, or just like as a...
Well, it's in a couple different tags.
Sure. I think in the context of, I'll say the Williams evidence, it is a forced iconic trope that black women are, put into or forced to reproduce when they go into intimate spaces, but also outside spaces. We think that the ways in which the effectual economy necessitates her to always be performing is one that pushes her into those kind of essentialist choice
What is
the 1AC
flesh?
does not only
What is
interrogate,
flesh?
but also require.
What is
Sorry.
flesh?
I think that flesh, I guess, is the kind of historical narrative through which we cohere black bodies as being always made fungible.
Okay, so if like black bodies are always made fungible,
I don't. Okay, go ahead.
is that not what you just said?
We are particular to the ways in which.
Right. But
bodies.
is there a way to move outside of fungibility?
I think that the way in which I'm going to position the negative is that the 1AC does not allow for that discussion, and we think that our role is one to impact from the act.
Okay. Well, yeah. I guess I'm trying to push a question that's more like it's either like is there a way out like theoretically? Like I know even if you disagree that is the app.
I think that's our sure. I think that's the wrong question, but I think that if we're doing an on-tig versus intimate, Sherefre is talking about the ways in which anti-black impulses slip into the level of the black and
it might be the wrong question, but it's like
and so I think
I
think that we are agreeing, right, that there is work to be done in terms of the intramural. We think that the ways in which we have engaged intramural are bad. And we don't think that they get to the ways of relationality that are able to facilitate outside of that fungibility, but over-recode the over-identification process of the black people and others.
Yeah, I think I'm good with choosing this out.
What's up?
Yeah, I'll add you. I thought I could choose those.
Yeah. Sometimes I confuse you. I think it's the incoming beer versus the already beer. Like it's been a minute. So I just run the beer.
Everything good?
Yeah, it's not.
Oh my god.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't.
What would even happen? Did everyone get it?
Oh, one second. Just making sure. I did get it.
Just let me know when you do, and I'll give an order.
Yeah.
Order's just case, small order on top. Presuming you float the arguments next to I. Is everyone good?
Oh, okay.
Just let me know when.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sweet.
The 1AC performance of intravention through the prevention of all safe lives is the only natural form of health insurance required. Of queer people utilize the form of social epistemology as a crucial source of value for black people who are marked by HIV and pushed out of their homes by homophobic and transphobic families. Even though black people don't have HIV AIDS, their bodies are marked by the stigma of being part of the at-risk population of forms of suffering that the bar and genders allow black queer people to remake themselves in order to contain the negative representations of the outside world. This social knowledge also links bar members to a kinship system that facilitates HIV AIDS prevention and supports HIV positive black queer people. House can provide medicine for things like HIV AIDS and hormone therapy, information and emotional support, and it sees prevention possibilities of government-funded intervention programs only seek to identify and contain even behaviors in order to protect the general population. Voting affirmatively endorses the House and leaves the form of national health insurance that actively prevents and helps cope with HIV AIDS and more like individuals that are suffering are here. They did not impact her in the affirmative. There is no reason why HIV was AIDS is good in the 1AC. There's no soft, no bad argument, no social epistemology bad argument proves that the 1AC was more so a criticism of the 1AC, but rather the 1AC was a criticism of the 1AC, but not impact her, which means that if we win that our impacts outweigh and that we have a greater internal consultancy, then you can vote affirmative. Now do the arguments here, although their theory may seem appealing, it's incapable of theorizing the our bodies, especially when it comes to HIV AIDS. There is no grammar to describe the particularity of the violation of the black group, but that for pessimism and criticism fracture around the figure of the black group. Their emphasis on the figure of the black woman reduces and erases the black group, which means No observed fact that their racist core violence is racial guarantees the reproduction of anti-core violence within their intramural and ensures that the human violence of white supremacist patriarchy rumor just from all emphasized for in 2017. Our rules also have a mission with human racial support dispensing all origins, all fields, and also been traditional whiteness and sexual identity, possible faults, racial identity, original left blackness, and this human is also made possible whiteness, the songs of rising prayer for innovation, and the loss of conceptual fraction, funding, finding, responsibility, minds, and command space, the richer is what it can possible to different structure, just willing to more destroy human richer, all the characters of human language, human percent, blackness, critical, and transfusion, and all rules of human is proud and linked before the contradiction, sign of particular violence, which bodies is not able to be pursued, cooperation with the term, not to let the white flash space, from summary and logic, and fire, and public mind, and violence, and science, and pressure, and vertical market, value, possession possible rupture, with the Russian walls of America, makes a sense of possible love, that the president's plan, and there's a particular liberation on that pushes the necessary proposition, first of all, the mission of the more perfect, the bunch of money on sale, supposed to be in the center field, matching dots, and the rest from the church, the dancing about self-ground, everything else, all complete minds, the way the balance fracture, multiple ways of existence, possible, those who are south, buzzers, and acts on the sub. Because if it's a multiple condition, the same by this community, so becomes all for you, the visual, the work, the watch, the strategic reasons, the last word, the visual explicate, the wonder, the trial, the power, fraction, the black, the sound, the right, so the one, the just, the inclusion, the articulate, the black performance complicates a singularity of linguistic grammars, a new lexical material that can articulate the density of black suffering is that of performance, especially when the art of performance is the only thing in this debate that can attend to the particular violence of HIV/AIDS that's noted in 3. The Russian terminology seems to be scientific things, security, translation, start for terminology, perfect terminology, possible figures, simplicity, structure, regression, bodies, secret set of possibilities, knowledge, interstitial, no spaces, the point of embarkation, your knowledge, your institute, the analysis, structured by the same visualization on the one meaning, phonic substance, the semi-attached, desire, universal, sources, and search for universal science, language, methodology, movement, language, seeing indications of language, material, no just specification, difference in the false universal science, language, of course, mythology, science, the universal science, and mind, only doesn't seem like it's a language, and I've reference science, and sources, doubling that things require science, never connected to structure, necessity, language, of performance. So there, solidification of the position of the black women through their analysis and direct evidence is staticizes the condition of trans asterisk, which denies the disruption of the human inherited transitivity that's made in 17. The thing about life is to engage in any body of black life, we're using social basis of hostilities, disintegrate the hegemonic polarity, because humanism, humanism, regime, well, and also for the trans asterisk 2 is not simply just third body, but it's equal new, corporal representation, identity, correct provocation, not a trans asterisk, continuous, disruptive or update orientation, for the American readers, reorientation to orientation mode, or working habitation, fugitivity, engaged to history, especially by revealing an exit of our evening nexus, concept refusing to live, ontological overflows, and continue all the good and messy transitivity to beginning is an underlying gender conditions of possibility for not distinction in dialogue for war, categories are preceded, a condition of how the vice transitivity first ever saw, a single proceeding for normal and over the practice of the recent gender care guidelines, ability care stabilize and time, a regulation for corporal identity, transition, not self-limited, the discourse, human displacement of a trans, is disrupting and perturbation of the process of the first thing is that they are description of like this interstitial trauma from on the outskirts of that order of purity, trans aspects, not a thing, or everything is process of thingness and beingness, according to the operation of here, a mechanism on the located or locomotion, agitation, troubling on reduces to the itself to the share of thoughts, the share of words, but the transcendent found to other common service, the child is above and below, current figure, the examines and making create space, the transition, body, substitution, sensory, ontological demarcations, and ontology, the transfigured by sensitivity, and the ontology, by parents, body, discordant, is one to give the body of feminism, which is by genetic income and males, dispossession of penis, companion, and critical self-reference, broken, or right, transactor, beginning movement, excitation, agitation, transactors, is not linear, permanent, or is supposed to be distinct transit, transactors, next, and transactors, is blackness, is beyond the walls of distinction, and legibility, already moving, that's the before we had another Williams evidence done of the victimization iconography arguments linked to the bar of their analysis specifically in the context of black women that are perceived as grieving. That's what the Williams evidence is about. That's brought in number 15. Examines the the public outrage of that person, there's a logic closure, and there's peer review, and victimization, now the scholarship realizes one for victimization, show this called the analytic lens, the pregnancy, the awards, exclusion, the parent, always bounds, consumer social, academic, development, space, and pursuits, club, investigation, and agent practice that enable you to send and negotiate obstacles with their academic and personal success is probably considered. Agent practice is everyday lived experience actors that can negotiate for more than a belonging versus self-determined terms, things, following, structures, looking to learn from every everyday language, and feel out of board, to forbid, certain further. The terms of POC, marginality, broad, better, academic, the agenda practice, the public, current college, and everything on the focus on everybody. On our agenda practice, we're going to find out the POC critique, specialists in the history of the POC critique, ensures that particular experience of POC, consumers are not sacrificing the service of grant. Narrative of POC practice, because this crystal piece of news, this culture, this contributes to POC critique, this exclusionary scholar, routines of POC critique, centralized, critical of the sources, knowledge, like you feel delivered, versus scared POC, invisibility, right, and use really critical scholarly examination, POC critique recommends intellectual aid, transformation, against quality sources of criticism, critical to your intellectual and marks security, scholarly resources, knowledge and production of security, marginality, careers, under subject to problems for them, the source of production, their engagement, force, and intellectual scientific scholarly, the cultural production of POC critique, and the inclusion of critical color routine, other work of consideration, POC visibility, pathology, concept, investigate how pursuits of color, negative risk, and activity, counter-side of dominant ideology, understanding sense, disidentification, personal supporting the intellect, critical color, image education, research, gun, the victimization, narrative, academic classes, and ethnic agency, critical color, POC critique, focus on POC enterprise, and important counter-rest of discourses to refine narratives to use, victimization. And analogizing the figure of the black woman to a condition of force of production conflates the position with the possibility to create rather than the inability to do so. They might say that black trans women are women, but their analysis reveals an insidious biologization of the woman that makes her politics inaccessible to trans black women. The interchangeable use of woman and female in the one and C without discussing the difference between those terms, and the implication of that difference is violence. That language implies an investment in the womb as a site of production that they refuse. The only mention of female and woman in conjunction in the one and C is the first piece of rough evidence, but it does not explain that difference, nor does it explain the way that that difference can constitute itself in their scholarship. All the other one and C evidence may be tagged by using female, but the evidence itself refers to women, and also makes references to female, which proves that this link is undeniable. Coming out of the two, you see now the impact is intramural violence. Subtle investment in the womb is an organ that defers womanhood from men's solidarity among black women, because cis black women will never really fuck with trans women in the same way that they fuck with each other, which creates the tension, violence, and battle fatigue that has plagued feminist movements for decades. They only recreated that. There's also an intervention. It's not saying that black women should not produce issues that they're behooved to produce by society. Black trans women are not, because they cannot access the figure of the womb. They demonize those black trans women who do want to produce for others, like house fathers and mothers that run ballroom houses to provide structures for care between members of ballroom communities and intervene by the demanding that they adhere to the incapability of productivity they've been held to all their lives. Not only the affirmative consult, the Bailey 13 evidence indicates that self-renewal that occurs in the ballroom allows people to come to terms with their queerness when it's denied by others. When a gay person is kicked out of their home by homophobic parents, the ballroom is somewhere where they can find kinship to start anew, so they can be their full gay selves. When a black trans person gets told that a women's march that she isn't a real woman, the ballroom is where she can go to hang out and dance with people who know that she's a woman. Now they're correct. A lot of people like sex workers don't have a choice, but A, this links back to all of their spectatorship arguments. They've highlighted the figure of the sex worker within the debate, and B, we care for those that don't have a choice, i.e. the kinship model solved. Now all of their arguments about how we didn't take your condoms prove that our argument is fundamentally true. We did not demonize them for not taking the condoms, nor did we question them about why they didn't take it. It's just a question of whether or not we can access them. Now there's a blinding against the one presentation of narrative medicine. That's a wrong tab. There's a blinding against their presentation of the fundamental heterogeneity of the category of the black woman by elevating the position not through a series of her performances and her stories that a gender static interpretation that's supposed to 14. Their gender responded by the particular historical confirmation based on voice of black women associated with black article discussion and erotic proof alternative moral that you give black women a massive historic biological black man progressive forms of individual that to rebut black women fall funding that Christus focus Marcus that a particular period of black women against heterogeneity black women is a category the part proposed use appropriation violations and black women above this trope categories of multitude or supplementary the direction heterogeneity and mechanism works and the produce black women is not the pitch level danger practice singular entity parts of black women is a reducible flash of black women for women to position described as a position of incorporation of the bar a structure historical difference becomes interchangeable as spectrum female body described in this term the woman will come under her taking other but also marks as passe. That's 20 seconds, I think.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to focus on these choice arguments and not consent arguments. I think the Bailey evidence assumes this. The Bailey evidence says that the ways in which we understand the ballroom is not one that creates and forces choice, but rather says if you are able to engage in those liminal moments, then the app will be able to solve that, and if you can't, we still solve it.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
What about the ballroom doesn't force choice when people have to, when there are different categories for, cis women and trans women in the ways in which they perform realness in the ballroom?
Well, first of all, I think that's a question of like the physical structure of the ballroom rather than the social epistemology.
Which is something that I don't think the 1AC ever gets to.
Well, I think that's exactly what
my question is, what does the 1AC do to break down those constraints when they are even in the ballroom?
So we think a couple of things. The first is that you are correct that the performance of the debate is about the performance of the 1AC. We think it is true that there are ballrooms that do that. We also think that every ballroom operates differently, which is why
this ballroom?
This ballroom is where the event is walking face.
Right. The category is walking face. We have not said that you cannot walk face. You said that you read.
How about this? Define. How about this so we can make all things clear? You're held down to something.
For sure.
What is walking face?
Okay, so we think that the 1AC is the instance of walking face. We think walking face is the ability to perform like cuteness in a sense, right?
What is cuteness? Are black women always, not all black women are fucking cute. They leave the fucking world. But the ways in which we are talking about how we come to cute ruptures at the level of like intervention out of the black woman's life.
You are correct.
What is cute?
You are correct that like the idea of cuteness does script out right certain black women. I think that once again, none of the 1AC or the 2AC has performed that, right? So like we have
You just said that's the role of how walking face or however you're saying it.
How
Why is
they
that
judge
difficult?
the category if that's the criteria through which we're supposed to perform?
Okay, so I'll explain this again. I think that like you are making arguments about a series of ballrooms that were not the 1AC. I think
you get to try to articulate the 1AC in the perfect version of your
I think I can clear this up a little bit.
Yeah, I know.
When Nay is explaining the category of walking face to you just now, they are explaining the way in which that functions in the normative ballroom sense. Our argument is that the 1AC's version of walking face does not perform that exclusivity to black women.
why, if we we are asking
There's like
Roberto,
no
I am
limit
asking about the
between-
structure, i.e. the criteria in which you do have to pass to win a category.
Well,
Why
there's
do
no
you not
ways,
perform that in the
like-
way in which you construct competition?
It's like you're describing a category that we.
I'm discussing the level of judgment, how they interpret their performance.
And
If
those
we did
links-
not walk
those
face
links-
correctly, we did not
It's
pass.
not that you did not walk face correctly.
Yes,
I think,
that's
okay,
all
so
we're fucking
I can either
questions.
answer a question or I can't. Like, I really want to answer it. So I think that you've made a bunch of arguments about why categories are brilliant or bad. The 1AC hasn't used the category of brilliance. The category of walking face that the 1AC has performed has not scripted you out of it. You have said that
Okay, I have a new
1AC
question.
that you have read the
It's
1AC
important
which is a
because I need to
different
get to
category.
the Bay evidence. What is the difference and the distinction that Bay is making between transness and the transness of transness is blackness?
There isn't. Blackness is trans.
That's not what the Bay evidence says.
That is what the Bay evidence
Transness and transness is blackness.
It says
So they're
right,
distinct
no.
things. What is the
Here's-
difference?
I got this. What Bay says is that black flesh is always in a state of transitivity. That should figure it out.
Okay. We're gonna take some practice.
Well, I'm back. Y'all ain't waiting on me.
I don't think we usually do that. It usually ends in the gist.
So you flew across that thing?
I don't always. I just flow with petty shit like this. I know something's about to happen and somebody gonna say something.
I haven't decided if I want to start doing that yet as a judge.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not there.
Yeah, I don't know if it's process or not, because I definitely listen to it.
Like, I know people are like, oh, that's just I'm like, not really.
No, it's not for me. I think we need to like know this and know it's gonna be right. And I know some of the things that are conscious of right now, or remind me of things I want to know them after the conversation.
So I have been selected then.
Right.
Well, in my mind, how I remember process is how I remember it. And
That's
my
not how I
power,
feel. I'm like, if that was a big moment, then
Yeah,
it was.
right, right.
I also don't feel like every question I flow things and I'm just like, oh, this could be important. You know what I mean?
I think it's important. Like, I'm gonna remember this. I remember you said this.
This is important.
Oh, you can't show me. I can't.
I can't show you.
Don't tank the judge.
Okay, goodbye. Good fucking bye. How about that? That has been taken. Okay?
It's so great when like you have on you can have more fun in the debate as you have. Most debates are really so boring. I said most.
Maybe bored or boring?
I said boring.
Okay. Double down. All right.
I didn't say I did not say this one was boring.
I didn't say you did. I'm just asking a question, right? Double down. He said.
Right.
Y'all boring.
I guess.
Like debates in general. I mean, you can judge a debate. Like if this is a, like you know what I'm saying. Y'all reach out and ask somebody, you're gonna be like frameworks. Like, oh my gosh, I've seen this debate
I don't think that's
10,000
boring.
times. That's boring. It's so boring.
I don't think that's boring.
Okay, see.
Amen. But
I'm
if that
remember
was
that.
true, let's
I remember that
y'all.
right there. I remember that. I remember that.
I was about to say something. That was true. Yeah.
New 2NC.
Questionable, nigga. Questionable.
I'd be like, yo, so I wouldn't vote on it. You said it's mine. So. It's boring. I guess in my mind, it's like it's a checklist. It's like you're gonna read procedural fairness. You got to make these like 4 arguments. Once you make them, if the other team don't respond to them correctly, it's game time.
So good for you, I don't want.
I rock with it. I rock with it. Let's make some stuff happen.
Are there any cards?
When is there? Go ahead, boo. Go ahead.
What order? You're all right, but I okay. But I am going to start with my word.
You want us to move forward?
This is really going to be down to you. So, yes, no. I don't know. I can't spatialize really what I'm into. I do. Cool. Excellent. This is my chaos of other having supposed to have either made no one understanding of power, as something through the litigation to purchasing the best because of gratuitous freedom and instead through the second section of producing a consequence of subject and occupies the capacity to produce transmit, meaning black women seem to be for everybody goes to that person, not everyone knows my name and everyone knows what I taste like a stereotype
modes of evidence. But you want to answer the ways in which you want to answer the particularly level of the structural evidence, the ways in which the black psyche is produces the recourse away from humanity by dropping black women in, which means the ways in which you do not want to the stigma, but also to you only reinforce the tropes and produce the because you do not like stay set aside the transcendentality and the one on basic. I kind of agree with that work above, but also you do like I think that we have we have about the internal ways in which you prefer performance, but what happens when you no longer have the capacity to perform? I think that's the basic that left are always forced to produce the space for more breathing room to survive. What happens when you fucking feel that's why? Well, William talks about the ways in which mobily Mammy Till had to deal with the death of Emmett, that she moved away from the archetype of the character that the black community took a shit on her because it said that she no longer fit the role of the character, no longer was producing the relation that was needed to produce a moment of character, also a moment of investigation, which we think is problematic because it allows for her to internalize her grief and always have a constituent inside of her self that's never able to be externalized, but producing the aesthetics through which her performances can be contextualized, which is problematic because it necessitates death in her life, not that we from the life in her death that they say the flight is. I don't think this makes so much sense because we said that you are art for human to this because you slide down the performative aspects of black women to the level of the essential ways in which it is not just about demotion of the sexual shape in which we are always infiltrating the ways in which human discourse and its principles on her flesh. One second.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah?
Okay, I just have a question about this maternal grief link. The Williams evidence seems to be indicating that the mobilization of grievance by political structures is bad, and she sort of like calls for an initiative to formulate or just sort of theorize maternal grief. What's the distinction between those two things?
Grief and grievance?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think grief is those private iterations to the moment that, like, violence occurs, and that, like, how you deal with that as an intimate way. Grievance is the kind of redress or seeking of kind of recognition that you are grieving to produce some kind of, like, public moment. Now, public can mean kind of, like, seeking redress on, like, judicial level, but it also is in relation to the black intramural, which is why I talk about the ways in which Mammy, when mobily Mammy Till no longer proved or was reproducing the tropes that were needed for the community, that they took a shit on her and said that you no longer are our single
I have a
mother,
couple questions.
which we think is problematic.
The kind of framework stuff we did at the top,
Yeah.
Can you explain the presumption argument? I kind of missed it, so.
Yeah, presumption is that the transcendental notions of a gratuitous freedom is produced through the fungibility of black female flesh. We think that if that is true, that black members the far over 1AC, and that if we refuse to perform that because our bodies are performing that aesthetic for you to take tactic on and weaponize against us, that is probably bad, and that it's the status quo, and that you have done nothing because you've not articulated a difference between ballroom this one and ballroom out there. If that is true, we're always fucking producing that
Can I
pathway
ask a
for you.
question?
Go for it.
Can you give me a list of the links coming out of the 2NC?
I mean, honestly, yeah, wow. Words. So I think I'll name the first one, the asexual economy link. This asexual economy link. The first thing that I talk about, that sounds linky. The second one is the spectatorship link. And I think the last one is the iconography link.
Two. 100%. Oh, what's the difference between the spectatorship DA and the iconography DA?
Right, so spectatorship within a particular context is the NDT evidence, right? That your kind of occlusion of the choice narrative as being something presented that does not have effects on the presenting itself. We think of the ways in which black men are positioned toward their sexual deviance, right? So like this is what I'm like, when I'm presented with a condom, even if I don't take it, the idea of giving me the choice goes, what's she into? What are her sexual preferences? I want to get into know that it produces a fantasy, right, for the ways in which black women's bodies are intervened in, and produces a context for the other because you're rewarded for forwarding those images, which we think is problematic and also non-consensual. And probably means that you don't get the stigmas that are attached to HIV and AIDS because you don't de-radicalize the ways in which black women are still fucking criminalized in their, acceptance of, medication.
I guess the last part is like, what part of the 1AC assumes that we are shot because we're queer?
The warrant evidence. I think that the ways in which you understand, because we are queer, that is what produces, or is a modality for how you understand your structural critique, is problematic because it doesn't get to the intimate ways in which I think Joy James articulates this, from the slippages. right? That intramurally, even when queer, we produce anti-black impulses to one another. What is the referendum on that? Are we just home?
Particular spaces we are in, which is practice for the outside world. Now, I'm going to make an argument about this Bay evidence. I think it's a recent analogy, this question of transness and the transness is blackness. The black flesh, they say that black flesh is always in the state of transit, but I think that can be true about the ways in which cabin flesh reproduces the structure. The structure manifests in various ways, but don't let them conflate gender and race at the level of the structure. Transness is a particular relation to the structure of race and gender. Our argument is about the structure, not the particularities or the contours of the experiential, right? And the ways in which our evidence is very specific to the ways in which trans women still occupy the position of the black female through the relation of gendering and ungendered violence, and the ways in which they are then judged in relation to the I don't have time. Does anybody have time? To the ways in which that icon of the black female operates, in the ways in which the right way to operate, they are judged in relationship to the iconography, that is the images of black women that are constructed out of that symbolic register. So they are judged in relationship to their relation to their femininity, and the ways in which they perform it, and the ways in which they perform masculinity are judged in relationship to things like the welfare queen and things like the Jezebel. Now, the NDT does not put community or debate as an activity on trial, but rather, the NDT is not a fucking ballroom, but the debate feeds off the performance of the NDT. What makes a community in the NDT is that's just the way that misogyny or sutures intimate relations between black women and other folks in other positions. That is always a question of the way in which black women can immaterially produce, not only for herself, not only for her family, not only for community, but for the world. The NDT's interrogation of the resolution, and debate has a community begs the question of who produces it. Value assignations are always produced the active black female flesh, and this is intrinsically tied to every problem. We can see how white people in their junior partners love to scapegoat black women with the problems of the community as they shift goalposts and enforce rules that apply to everyone. Rendered keeping and Jasmine did that work in the 2NC, but this should shape your understanding of the vague moments of reference in the NDT. What fills in those spaces is always doubly deep, and the exclusivity claims to the NDT means that they are not held accountable or responsible for the repetition of this moment, but instead a ballot makes them outside of their relationality as they break down the question of who and where is the ballroom. Is this actually a debate? But actually they are outside of that in the ways in which they have to be held responsible for the breaking down of those relations, and the ways in which they obfuscate the ways in which we need to interrogate in this space and in all spaces, in the spaces that we are in, as to the specific nature in which we are relating to each other in places like debate.
Yeah, I think that it's just paradoxical, because it's as though they think intrinsically that the performance is good for the virtue of the performance, and not that those who choose not just that those who do not choose to perform are bad, but that it requires those forms or codes of recognition in order for you to say that performance is good. Right? I think that this distinction is important because it means then that you wait on that call in order to respond.
The one is performance of intervention to the prevention of all slaves' lives and is only natural health insurance for black members of few benefits that are conceded coming out of the 2C versus self-promote for those who have been pushed out of their homes like queer-phobic family members. B is kinship that it houses that supports HIV-positive members, and C is healthcare in the form of HIV, AIDS, medicine, hormone therapy, prevention information. The 2 and C can see that none of their arguments or impact or just a criticism of the way that the affirmative is framed. But this means that we can go for an impact outweighs arguments in the 2 AR, but would prove that our ability to solve HIV/AIDS within this space and bring the social epistemology of the barroom into the space that is debate is uniqueness for the affirmative allows to solve the impact that is HIV/AIDS stigmatization within debates, which means you can affirm the house that because of methodology that would resolve the vast majority of their problems. The 2 and C framing of presumption and structural analysis sounds really nice, but does not. For the black queer, they have fundamentally conceded the claim of the board. Evidence makes that there's no theory that can attest to the particularity of the violence of the black queer experiences. All of their analysis about how the world is fundamentally based on the conception of black female flesh or black women's flesh does nothing for the violence, does not need to do a specific analysis about how the technologies of pulverization that make a black queer like horrible come to be, i.e. that of HIV/AIDS and stigmatization. They make the argument the way in which their gender is related to each other is always based on the figure of the black woman, but that does not explain the particular technologies of violence. So we have a test which proves that the 2 and C science that HIV/AIDS is fundamentally horrible. The more evidence comes to the conclusion that we need to work towards theories that can approach the methodological quagmire of the black queer are arguments that the Bay evidence can approach that theory, thinking of blackness as transitivity, i.e. that black flesh is always in motion, moving through the trans-asterisk of the transatlantic slave trades, where allows the black minds to be moving through things like the plane of imminence that allows this flesh to always be restricted in multiple ways, depending on the way the scenario is function means that our theory is capable of understanding A, the way that black women can be related to in terms of the way their flesh is mobilized in civil side, but B, the way that black queers can attend to the particular violences that are mobilized against their flesh because they move in different ways throughout society. They say that trans women are judged in relation to the black female flesh. That may be true, but they're their representation based on who has access to black female flesh just entrenches that same relationship because black trans women get silenced. This proves that their argument also creates anti-black impulses that they have not contested. Now the argument I'm going to blow up here from the 2EC that I don't think they have a really good response to is the argument about a female and woman conflation, the fact that the female and woman conflation, the fact that they've sort of attested to the way in which people can access black female flesh through the figure of the womb and the figure of production is fundamentally problematic because it means that their interchangeability implies an investment in the womb as a side of production that they have articulated to refuse our arguments. That creates intramural violence because the black trans women that they sort of attempt to align in a solidarity against that productivity cannot relate to that sort of imperative against it because they never had the capability to produce in that way in the first place. Proves that their arguments are fundamentally bad for black queer women. Arguments that only the affirmative is capable of solving this. They have conceded this coming out of the negative block, which means that we're reading a fundamental link to an argument that outweighs the vast majority of their impact because, believe it or not, the 2NC was fairly light on internal link change into all of their structuring arguments. Now, our argument the arguments that the barroom can create forms of self-renewal that allow black trans women to identify with themselves in the ways in which they choose rather than sort of attempting to aspire to the normative narrative of the black cis woman. If they are too trans or too woman or too etc., they can go to the barroom in order to restructure their subjectivity in such a fashion that allows them to identify with themselves and have a fucking fun in the face of death, which is our argument about why barrooms are necessary in spaces like debate. Now, they make all these arguments on victimization, but I think the broken evidence from the 2EC is fundamentally unanswered on this question that the victimization narratives that their evidence apply, particularly that of the Williams evidence, specifically talks about the way that black women's grief is mobilized towards grievance in places like legislative structures like the court does not attend to the way in which black queers are victimized in a fundamentally different way, which means none of their legal arguments apply to the way that the 1EC itself is structured, and also don't apply to the way the barroom is able to resolve that by creating spaces that are absent of that victimization. This is a conceded argument that they, let's say, they misanswer the choice argument, arguments that the barroom solves the choice argument by not criminalizing their choice. They say that it sort of implies a question of what their sexual preferences are, but that's not the argument. It's not that we want to know what your sexual preferences are. We want to provide strategies that you can use regardless of that. I.e., if you want lube, if you want dental dams, if you want condoms, you don't give a fuck what you pick, but it's just a question of you being able to prevent things like HIV/AIDS, which you have not contested. It's fundamentally bad because it steals career life. Now, they make some arguments about how centering. And they make some arguments about sex workers, but argument that the centering of sex workers and black women links to all of their spectatorship. This up because even if the 1EC has introduced the figure of the black queer, they have also introduced those two other positions out of which the audience can consume, which proves that all of their arguments link back to them. Now, there are arguments that the kinship is our kinship arguments solve all their arguments that all ballrooms matter. The king, which is the king evidence, there's different houses that can attend to different particularities, which means there's no link to the king evidence, but also even if they win a link, kinship is try or die. They mystify the Bailey evidence. You should read it back at the end of this debate. It's actually very good on how the social epistemology of the ballroom is able to resolve things like HIV/AIDS. This is an uncontested claim. Now, there we will concede that the 1 and C will say read, which means that they are also a ballroom category. It means all the 2 and C and 1 are impact arguments about how all ballroom performances are bad or performativity itself is bad links back to them because they themselves has entered into the performative space of the ballroom by entering a different category than that of the 1 and C, which proves they cannot win a link to the affirmative that doesn't also link back to them. Now, the evidence will resolve the vast majority of the womb conflation arguments. It allows us to think of black flesh through transitivity, which is a fundamentally better analytic. I did that work above. Now, they make all these arguments about how and why become a guard authority for Nate's performance, but arguments that broken for evidence were able to resolve that because even if the audience is all because the audience is always consuming narratives of black fashion means that all these arguments are fundamentally inevitable and that violence comes from the coding of performance and the fact that they're able to integrate themselves into a performance framework by saying that the one MC was a form of reading face means that they are also able to be coded by the audience. Proof there's no unique officer. They also say the ballroom isn't after this. They also say the ballroom isn't everywhere. No, it's obviously it's not fucking everywhere. We never said that it was arguments that we should bring into spaces like debate, particularly because of the way that black queer bodies are demonized in the space. Our argument is that bringing it here's unique to things like HIV/AIDS prevention, but they have not contested now. There's also a culpability to these whiteness arguments, their ability to assage the question of the debate from that of HIV/AIDS and black groups to that of my whiteness and exactly what allows them to remain complicit in the violence that is HIV/AIDS, which is a culpability to that name. A shooting culpable for my whiteness when he's still experiencing the impact and stigmas of the HIV/AIDS epidemic, which is the one he has centered the question on their ability to skirt away from the discussion is exactly what produces that same silence that Ronald Reagan had that allowed him to neglect the question of the fact that black queers were fucking dying during his presidency without even saying the word AIDS is proves, and for when he sees the only methodology that can actually resolve any of the impact that are brought into this debate, and we've also won the only internal link argument in solvency, which proves that we outweigh everything they said in the laws.
We have 8:33.
These are shots.
Yeah, I mean, I'm starting with I said the impact in her relationship. Right.
Rob, your hair is disgusting. It's just like, it really looks like, fuck, I don't know. Like, do you remember the TV show Johnny Cast?
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. That's like the structure. See, my thing is like, if this is the cleanup, like this is what it looked like after they cleaned it up, right?
Oh.
So I want to know what it looked like before. You take anything?
Control. Stop!
I don't know. It's real hard to see.
Oh man.
Okay.
No.
I'm awake now. So. It's not good morning. Alright, so the order. Oh. Bring them stuff on top, and then we'll find out. Alright. You should go to the one I think is making performance in the ballroom, but my question still remains everywhere in the ballroom, everywhere in the ballroom, then where is that coming from? Is it you from? No, I think it's a bad thing considered impact on the other 1 hour speed wasted, which we would not find that produce moments of society, under the most of return, communication, assuming mode of relationality is the mode of relationality is able to break out our break out into the transcendental ranking to the black man, turn on do more work there because that's their best road to victory in terms of ways in which they think we conflate the roles of the transition, black is not all the minerals, they've not done the work of explanatory power provided is true, but also the 1AC does not put their community or debate on trial, but rather that debate feeds off of the performance of the 1AC. So what does a community look like? What does it mean? What are its metrics? All things that are left that leave you that are left undescribed from the 1 hour, which means that you should feel a little bit uncomfortable the ways in which spectator should protect the conclusions. The link I'm going to go for is allowance for white bodies to consume the conclusion and its rhetoric for the ways in which yes, their bay evidence allows for you to slip it, but also to the idea of considered choice. Now, no, it's not a question of the ways in which you present that the community allows for you to have the choice of having the relation to the contraception, but no, it is the presence of that choice that allows for black women to produces the image of fantasy, the ways in which our bodies are always performed against us, justifies the Williams evidence because it's not a question of the black maternal just as the black women, but rather the positions that we are reproduced to occupy, which is like an important distinction, the ways in which they understand conflation, which is not responsive to in the way our things also indicative that you refer to or hiding behind. They do as a reason for why you're able to one also could do the 2AC and the 1 hour, but not the one that not respond to the ways in which your relation now is produced through the consumption of black in the flesh and produce a mirrored reflection of yourself, which means that this proves the woman of the inclusion is rather the 1AC, but also to allow for those kind of fantasies to be demonstrated in the ways in which we're not able to get to care because we're always because they only answer the bell on the referendum of you may recognize that. Remember when Taylor talks about Hartman, the ways in which we only understand reparative nature of these slavery, but that always allows for the conferral of self-agency to produce moments of reliance outside of the notion of all community with least culpability, which means you have which means that there are two considered impacts. First, the integrity of space is key to one of ourselves to files because there are actually clear difference between how the symbolic contact present in white spaces and the black culture beyond the black vulnerability was constructed as a response to white vulnerable culture anti-black practices and those links to our terrific evidence and investigation of the black natural that is future for the ask the people believe the black people allow them to concede the king argument that yes, the white defense the different houses that they form portray on the reinvest in the values of hyper-masculinity and hyper-femininity that become a performance that are mirrors for black women and insistent transcend that causes the psychic violence and intramural evaluation, but they also invested in personal ethic that conversation we the slave that makes the individuals responsible for not taking conduct offer, which turns the average, they increase the stigma, and even if they went on to say they make it worse or at best, they cannot solve it now. Next argument. Yeah. Some of this line by line stuff that I'll contextualize you those before you're me. They say that they are performance of intervention, but no lip service to the type of work that I'm doing ways in which you do not get under this performance for
coaches wrote in what they wrote in.
Say someone's name, the whole room would just start
Okay,
clapping.
like the coaches, when you registered, you had to write in everything for them to say.
But it's generally known that she's
Yeah. Whatever you wrote in is what they
Like,
like.
really?
Like all the randoms that they're reading for our team, I wrote
Right.
in like a random.
I was wondering whether you said you were
I wrote a bunch of ridiculous stuff down. I did all right.
What was it? Best dress, what you said?
I might have to fly it outfit. Random.
Alright.
Everybody good?
Yeah.
True or not, there's a lot of link work and impact where with no impact for your reason why. In terms of the affirmative, you should vote for the one that sees the performance that enters me the prevention ball, the other, the house, the league, we did that the same. Lies for a couple of reasons. First, it's self-renewal. We think that the one that sees performance is self-renewal allows us to reconstitute ourselves in the bar when you are too gay, too woman, too trans, that ultimately allows you to reconstitute yourself by force of worthfulness in the face of worthlessness. What they have conceded will be the ultimate reason why we're able to resolve. Like this has been going for the second argument, the kitchen structure is able to resolve. Care do things with cheerleaders able to solve HIV/AIDS with a try or die for me that is explicitly draw coming out of the one year. We think that the form of kitchen laws and dispersal of medicine has said that the people that are too gay, too trans, the ones that are exactly leading the barroom, which is key to dispersal of care for people throughout all the black people, which means that we are able to functionally solve all their impact arguments with the rest of the app is able to solve. They also conceded that the one in C was a read, which means they have already performed in the barroom, means that they've already double turned themselves. You can see that it was a read. And function means that the barroom is the only space that gives the stage to talk about these sorts of intramural relations. Means A, the debate is not intramural relations. B means the barroom is necessarily good for having these conversations, which turns all their performance arguments now out to a couple of pieces of office at the top. The first is going to be the opposite side. Step one says that there is no consumption space in black queer, that we should open our understanding up to always, which we can constantly approach that do things like open up the weird church strategies like the barroom. We think that this function is able to turn all the arguments we will look to ways which they biologize from the female flesh and metroside transform in relation to that functional reason. White should prefer our friends void what this main structure on a second. Offensive reduce the bay evidence, usually extended by evidence, black flesh is always in a state of transitivity. It exists in a perpetual state of motion. Now it's all just as a corporate reality such as that of the black woman's ability to perform differently, being a butch mammy or Jezebel, produce differently, care, reproduce, and grieve, and be interpolated differently. To performance analysis in the psyche exemplifies ways with black flesh is always in transition, especially under the white gaze. You should view this in terms of structural argument because it assumes that statusizing black flesh is possible is unjustified assertion into another statusizing of the first woman through the concept of black female flesh produces those anti-black impulses to conflict the woman with femaleness and womanhood that flips their impact bearing back onto them because transphobia is a form of intramural violence. The thing of black flesh movement disintegrates ontological demarcation. Only transitivity is solved because their anti-black impulses are derived from the desire to statisize black female flesh to condition for ours to be proven. It's incorrect because black trans women are inherently various unprotected, but it also solves the performance double turn argument because they would claim performance the reason why you see while claiming performance the anti-black movement of black flesh. We think that fundamentally what this debate comes down to is how do you metricize how black trans women are able to operate within this space. We think that you're fungibilizing them down to a form of always in metric to black female flesh destroys the ability for them to access self-renewal, which means you can't solve any of the net benefits to the affirmative function means that it's tried or died for the affirmative. Now they've also conceded that the culpability is that all their spectatorship arguments are predicated all over focused on Rob, which means silence equals death there. Over focus on why spectatorship ultimately allows the guilt of slavery that destroys the ability for us to talk about intramural relationships. It's about intramural relationships. Why the fuck is Rob talking in the first place was a question they never asked, that they never begged to ask. We think that functionally means that they ultimately create the form of guilt of slavery that means silence equals that because functionally they move responsibility onto Rob to be able to have all the answers. He will never have them because he's always parasitic, which means it's fundamentally a trial after the affirmative. I'll go down the line and do some disapplication there. Basically, the one I see was the performance of the ballroom and the view from no more because the ballroom is everywhere. First of all, they conceded the one argument that the ballroom isn't everywhere, but it damn sure is here, which their performance are breeding within this space. The one evidence also solves because we said we should always be providing spaces for the black to be able to liberate themselves. Means even if it's everywhere, there's probably solvency from the app of the global this turns the impact of the view from nowhere argument that say we assume that relationality is able to solve, but you say that we should interrogate intramural relationships, and you also assume relationality. Reading assumes and allows relationality because reading is the way we can interrogate each other ways that are helpful for understanding our practice on the outside world. Because you function to see the form of the ballroom is good. They say the one doesn't put debate on trial. We are putting you on trial for the ways in which you have related to things like black trans bodies with your able to form the self and self-renewal response to HIV/AIDS impact. Also, you destroy the possibility of community, which is why you raise those questions in the first place to say that white bodies are able to coerce after the forms of victimization. But first of all, to drop the Brocking bro evidence which says that victimization and white spectatorship is not a so question how we perform agency in the spaces debate evidence returns to our office why the ballroom is saying self-renewal as keys for also you can cross out the culpability is that I did about this and that choice that produces fantasies of performance. But A, the ballroom is able to solve this, i.e. those with HIV/AIDS who weren't given the choice are the ones leading the ballroom. Second of all, is that it's try or die for the affirmative, which is the 1 AR impact for on-site HIV insights that they constantly conceive this and that Roberto had behind me. The culpability side of those songs you call the science equals death, which is why the two in our never says the words HIV or AIDS. They say that the space is key to understand the symbolic, but no, you said the intramural conference is still going to hold you to this, which is why we read the one you see is the question of the symbolic and the symbolic. The ultimately, they link back to the culpability is that this is the one to defend all houses of different hierarchies. Basically, one, there's no warrant for why you should have to defend all. The 1 AR push them on this too is that you perform the heights of hypermasculinity too in the way which you metricize how trans bodies get access to certain services, i.e. why is CC McDonald attack your fundamental understanding that they have to make a choice between blackness or transness and blackness and queerness, especially what Warren is talking about the fact that we're always putting these frustrations to ultimately nihilistically withdraw from places that are key for black people to move away from the misogynistic trends that you make. They say the individual responsibility turns the app, but no, it's a community responsibility, which is why we invoke the whole community to participate, because we think all of y'all are complicit in silence equals death, which we functionally is try. We're tired of the affirmative, they say that performance of lives on trust, but you also perform the reading arguments, and that also they can see that it's inevitable. They say that outside inside is based on black female flesh, but this is what links them to the trans boundary, and it's that the fact that inside is outside is always predicated on black female flesh causes the overfocus and choiceability for black trans women to access self-renewal, because they always get reconstituted in relationship to the womb. They say that we're choosing freedom is false, but it's try or die for the affirmative reason. If we want to represent what's the opposite to solve HIV/AIDS, then we are able to win this debate. Instead of it fails the system productivity, but silence equals that means that even if we should fail the system, we should not fail black queer trans people. They say that black female is a structural claim, and that doesn't matter. Your conflation of it is a structure for how we metricize black trans access, ultimately turns your ability to access any of the alternative affirmative laws. They say that what monarchy do we understand that do we understand the welfare cream, but that leads to arguments about they say that black female flesh is open to production, but you think you're out the way in which you understand reproduction, just the way in which black trans women are always barred from that reproduction. They said that they have read the 1AC. This is our argument how you have already performed the ballroom, even if you don't want to. Functionally, they've impacted in the ballroom and performed in the ballroom by reading, which functionally means they agree with the act.